Last week, the second entry in the Daemon X Machina franchise, Titanic Scion, released, and before that, I'd been playing the original 2019 game. So today, I want to talk about it and give my thoughts overall on that game, but also talk a little bit about whether or not you need to play it or whether you should play it before the new one. Before we dive into all of that though, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you're a fan of mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also, head on down to the comments section below. If you've played the original game, then let me know your thoughts on it, and if you're playing the new sequel, let me know your thoughts on that as well. Alright, so first I want to talk independently about the original game, whether that's the gameplay, the story, the characters, and then we'll move on to how it kind of ties into the second game from what I've played of the second game, and again, whether or not you do need to play it or whether or not you even should play it before that one. So, in terms of Daemon X Machina from 2019, this one is only available on Nintendo Switch, which is kind of a bizarre decision. I feel like it's almost a prime candidate to be on, at the time, probably the PS4. It just seems like one of those kind of games that I'm not going to say would look fantastic on the console, but it just seems like it's almost tailored to that, maybe a little bit more than the Switch. With that said though, works very well on the Nintendo Switch. I played it on the Switch too. It ran good, frame rate, all that kind of stuff. It's a nice flowing game. I wouldn't say that it is super fine-tuned, but at the same time, there's nothing inherently wrong with it. There's no noticeable bugs or glitches or lag or frame rate drops, nothing like that. It's generally a well-running game. The only issue I guess I have in that regard is when you're flying around and then you land, there's a little bit of a pause to kind of get moving again, which I do think kind of kills the flow of gameplay. It maybe is intentional, it makes a lot of sense. These are big hulking machines. Of course, if it comes, flying towards the ground and then lands, it's going to take some time to bend down and all this kind of stuff and actually prepare to get moving again just because of gravity and such. So I guess it makes sense from a logistical perspective and, creating that sense of realism of the scale of these things. But in terms of the gameplay, it does slow it down a little bit, and that's the only minor grievance I guess I had in that regard. But to sum up the gameplay itself, and I guess the whole game really, it is almost like Armored Core Light. The mechanics and the way that the game plays feels very much like Armored Core, particularly, of course, Armored Core 6, the most recent entry in that franchise. The way that your mech moves around, you've got kind of a little bit of a stamina bar, your weaponry, the way that it locks on, all that kind of stuff is very much an Armored Core type of game. And when I say Armored Core Light, I'm talking probably more so in terms of the difficulty, because of course Armored Core as a franchise has always been fairly difficult. It's had that sense of difficulty to it because it is a From Software franchise who are largely known for the Souls-like games and generally difficulty within the games. And then with Daemon X Machina, it is a fairly easy game. There are some difficulty spikes at random times in levels. There's 2 missions that I can think of where they just seemed significantly more difficult really than any of the other missions, and it was just a bit random because the game was generally easy. It had a consistent sense of difficulty to it. And then you get some of these missions and it's why is this one so much harder? Why am I dying so much easier? Why am I getting all this stuff thrown at me? Why is, this thing that I'm trying to protect being destroyed very, very quickly and thus makes the actual mission harder? So there's difficulty problems in terms of that, but overall it's an easy game. And I would maybe say it's a little bit too easy. I would have liked a bit more challenge from the game, because especially when you're going up in these ranks, so you got rank D, I think you start rank E, so it's E, D, C, B, A. And you would assume that as the game progresses, it gets a little bit harder. That did not seem to be the case. It was almost just more of a chapters in the story, but the way that it was worded, you would expect that it would get progressively more difficult. But again, that was not the case. It remained a pretty easy game throughout. Now, the missions themselves, the combat, they're fairly straightforward, but also quite repetitive. But it's the kind of gameplay where if you enjoy the gameplay loop, the repetitiveness of it is not too bad. I personally really enjoyed it. It is, like I said, it's like what Armored Core is, but just a little bit easier. So as someone who doesn't like my games to be too difficult, I just enjoyed going through this game and, essentially just fighting off different enemies and destroying mechs. In that regard, it was cool. This is one of those games, franchises, if you will, where if it was a bit more fleshed out, a bit more fine-tuned, a bit more premium in a way, it could have been a really great, AAA mecha game. The potential was there for it. But again, ultimately, just because of minor things, and I guess because it's a bit more of a indie type of game or more of a AA game, then it's just not quite at that standard. But the gameplay, again, I really enjoyed it. It's fun, it's fast paced, it's simple, it's easy to control. There's really good customization in terms of your weapons, and you feel like there's a lot of variety in that regard, which I guess does create a sense of variety in the missions, depending on how you want to go about it. But yeah, like I said, gameplay, combat, all that kind of stuff was fun, easy to control, and it just made the gameplay experience a good time. A big selling point for Armored Core, this game as well, and just mecha games in general, is the level of customization. Everyone loves to design their own giant robot. And this game, I think, pretty much delivers on that. It's got the customization in terms of different parts and kind of linking all those together. You've only got like a certain weight, so you've got to be a bit more strategic about exactly what you're using. You can go more of the heavy route of like using bazookas and shotguns, or it can be personally, I like to have like a sword in one of my arms and then an assault rifle in the other, because that's just more of my style of gameplay. You can have shields like, on your shoulders, or you can have weapons on your shoulders. It's kind of up to you how you want to like personalize and change up your mecha within this game. It's kind of all there in terms of the gameplay elements of it, but in terms of the visuals as well, you can change all the different colors, you can put decals on, you can put different styles, you can move around those decals, change the size of them, change weathering. I think all the customization you would expect and want from a giant robot, it's here. There's really no complaints that I have there. Like, I think it's fleshed out enough. I don't really feel like it needed to be more intricate than it was. It worked for what I wanted, which, when it comes to this customization stuff, I don't usually go too deep into it. But from my perspective, it did what it needed to do. There's enough customization there to make things exciting and, kind of change up your look and your style and make it really your own. And that's all I would personally want out of a customization system. And I feel like most people would as well. I think where my biggest issues come in with Daemon X Machina is in the story, the pacing of that characters, all that kind of stuff. It's not its strongest suit by any means. Again, gameplay, even the visuals of the game, I think are all good. Like, it absolutely delivered on that kind of stuff. Again, not like top tier, but it did what it needed to do, in my opinion. But when it comes to the story, I think it's got major pacing issues. For one, I think the reveals are largely in like the back third, if not back quarter, and there's a lot going on there. You're ultimately trying to flesh out a lot of characters. You're trying to flesh out the story and introduce elements and make these big reveals that don't feel all that exciting. They are kind of inevitable type ones. I'm not going to say that from the get-go you know exactly where the story is going to go, but you kind of get a sense of like it's going to go in this thematic direction, and it does absolutely go that route. Also, I think early on there's some serious pacing issues in terms of introducing characters. It seems like every mission you're introducing a new character, you're introducing a new set of characters, and it does get quite confusing about who everyone is, why there's so many people involved in this. And ultimately, as you get towards the end of the story, I don't feel like it needed as many characters as it had. You had so many different like mercenary groups, and you had at least like 4, sometimes even 5 people within there, and you tried to flesh them out just a little bit. So it feels very obligatory. Like, it feels like, okay, we've got these characters, we need to give them something, some sort of motivation, some sort of backstory, some sort of, like relationship that they've got. And it just feels like it's there because it needs to be there, because we have to try and flesh out these characters somehow. If you removed most of the characters out of this, it wouldn't make too much of a difference. There's maybe like a few that are slightly interesting, but for the most part, they're not. They are kind of cookie cutter archetypes that have a certain personality, stick to that. They have a role, they stick to that. And there's nothing all that exciting about them. There's nothing all that interesting about them. So in regards to characters, I don't think it particularly delivers. Pacing, a little bit off in some places as well with the story. And the story itself, it's kind of predictable, unnecessarily convoluted in some ways. The gameplay absolutely is king here. And even that, it's not the greatest thing ever. And now for the question that I'm sure you all want answering. Should you play Daemon X Machina prior to Titanic Scion? You don't need to, for one, and I don't really think that you should, because this game, the original Daemon X Machina, is still like £50. It's still full price. For some reason, this thing does not go on sale, so I had to pay full price for it, and I will say right off the bat, it is not worth full price. It is worth maybe like £30. I paid 50. Absolutely not worth that price. But anyway, should you play it before Titanic Scion? you don't need to, and again, I don't think you really should, because Titanic Scion, from what I've played of it, which is really only the demo, there's loose connections in terms of concepts, different creatures, races, general like terminology being used. They still use the term arsenal. So again, like it uses a lot of the similar terminology. The gameplay is somewhat similar as well, but story-wise, it feels like its own completely separate thing. Like it uses the same franchise name, but it almost feels like a spiritual successor slash soft reboot where you don't really need the original game. From what I've played of Titanic Scion, which again is only the demo, that is the far superior game in terms of gameplay, and the story is just a little bit more intriguing right off the bat. There just seems to be more substantialness to that game. To answer that question of should you play the original game before the sequel, no, because there's not really any story connection, and I don't think the original is any better than what this sequel seems to be. So you can just go right on into the sequel, and again, you're not really missing out on much. So overall, Daemon X Machina is at best a decent enough mecha game. It's a solid AA mecha game that has good enough gameplay. It's an enjoyable 10, maybe 15 hours to put in, but at the price of £50, which it still is, and still seems to continue to be, do not buy it at that price. There's plenty of other mecha games out there that are cheaper. You can get Armored Core 6 for like £20, which, even though I'm not the biggest fan of that game, just because it's a bit too difficult for me personally, it is by far the superior game, and you are going to get the better experience out of it because, again, it is a much better game than this. But at the same time, if you are willing to just throw down money like it's going out of fashion, then I don't think this is the worst thing ever. Solid gameplay, it's a fun time. It's not going to win any awards in terms of its story, nor is it really going to win any awards in terms of its gameplay or any element of it, but it's good enough. And that's probably the best way I could describe this game, is that, you know, again, it's not winning anything, but it's a good enough gameplay experience. So with all that in mind, I'm going to give Daemon X Machina a C. But those are my thoughts on Daemon X Machina. Before I get out of here, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you're a fan of mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also, like I did say earlier as well, head on down to the comments section below. Let me know your thoughts on the original game. Let me know your thoughts on Titanic Scion if you have been playing it. I'm definitely going to do a review of that game at some point. I haven't actually picked up the full game yet, but I'm definitely planning to get it soon. I'm also going to get Super Robot Wars Y, which I still have not started, but I will be playing that game and bringing you guys a review of that. So there's plenty more like mecha video game reviews to come on the horizon. There's still a lot of stuff that I want to do regarding some 2025 games that I have missed. So stay tuned for all that coming between like now and towards the end of the year. Because don't worry, there's plenty of games that have released, such as Sin Duality, Echo of Ada, Mecha Break. These are the kind of games where I haven't really talked about them much on the channel, but I would like to talk about them a little bit before the end of the year. Thank you once again for tuning into Mecha Chat today. I'll see you guys next time.